off camera you called yourself a process geek. Can you expand on what you meant by that?
Yeah, I've been a process geek for years and years, and what I mean by that is a rule of my leadership is that it's not just what but how. And there's so many things that may in fact be of deepest conviction and of the most surpassing truth, but if we don't approach them and live them out in ways that are in which they're able to be received and understood, then in fact you can rob them of their power to be effective in life. And so how we do things needs to be understood as, in a way, just as important as what it is we're trying to witness to. And a good example of that for me is what leadership is, that as a rector of a parish, I don't think it's my job as a leader to get people to go where I think they ought to go. I think it's about how we work together to go where we need to go and how we discern that together.
You mentioned using process to repair a very divided parish where you are now. Could you tell us that story?
Yes, and it was no secret when I arrived in Tupelo in 1994 that it had been a parish that had had several years of division, and that one of the reasons my name was put in there is I was known as someone that used systems theory, the theories of congregation and leadership that derive through Ed Friedman, for ways that we can understand mediation, process, conflict resolution, and discernment, and that it really centers on how community is formed and maintained. And as long as people can trust how something is being done, that everything is above board, what you're trying to do is clear, who's doing it is clear, what the processes are, when, where, why, how, all of that, that people can trust it, then you can really bring a great deal out in a community that brings the best out of people. Things that they're able to give to rather than find ways to defend themselves from. And if they trust the leadership, then they are very glad to contribute to a vision. And for me, that's about building the center. And that's the way you can heal divisions or divisiveness, polarities, whether it's at the national church's level of left and right, or at the level of a congregation of cliques or divisions, that you heal polarities by having a safe place in the middle where both sides can meet and understand, first, that they need each other, and second, that they both have something that the other one needs.
Don't you think it's accurate to say that once you strip the procedural abuses from most of the crises in the church today, from the parish level all the way up to the national church, that you're still left with two battling theologies that are mutually exclusive? How will a better process reconcile those two?
Yeah, I do think that it's true that I could even go so far as to say that any conflict I could name readily is the result largely of what I would consider bad process, and that's how important I think process is, because I don't think, even at the national level, that the examples of the theologies that we have working, as you would say, are necessarily mutually exclusive. They've come to be so, or they've come to be seen to be so, I think, because of the way in which both sides have lived them out and have reacted to each other. I think that really what's important is to understand that, as Jesus said, that we will be one even as the Father and Jesus are one. The only way we can understand who Jesus is to us, to the church, to the world, is as we discover how we are one to each other. And these two battling theologies need to understand that they both have something to say to the other that the other one needs to hear. And the more we can do that in a place, it doesn't mean give up your differences or your convictions. It just means, how do you complete one another? My personal way of doing that for people is to say, can you in fact question or admit that your experience of discipleship and your experience of Christ in your life has been incomplete or imperfect? And if we can say, Right, yes, I have been an imperfect disciple, or my experience of the power of the Holy Spirit in my life, or my experience of discipleship has been incomplete or imperfect, then how would I make that fuller and richer? It won't be with someone who's just like me, because that means that's the position that has left me feeling unfulfilled. So it needs to be someone who is different from who I am, in order to find a way that can fill something that I can't bring on my own, or people of like-mindedness can feel.
We're on a break right now, and we're about to have a test of that as we go into the debate about a resolution over the Executive Council of the Episcopal Church's actions to affiliate the entire church with a very controversial advocacy group for abortion. So how do we keep those two sides in tension using the kind of process, resolution, and refinement that you're talking about?
The example that's about to come to floor, we spoke about in our clericus meetings, and I'm dean of Tom Bigby, and we spoke about this issue that came up, and the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, and how the Executive Council of the Episcopal Church had done this, and we addressed this. And what emerged from this is something that I think shows, as I said, the way process really impacts something important. And in fact, it has a very compelling and well-known secular example, secular parallel in our nation's history. We all were told about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, or the Jeffersonian Republicans, that Congress can do something only if it's explicitly given those powers by the Constitution, or Congress can do something unless it is specifically prohibited. And that's, I think, what's going on here, is that our Constitution and canons do not address whether or not the Executive Council of the Church that holds the policies of conventions in each triennium can create new policy. It doesn't address that, but it doesn't forbid them from doing so. But historically, the expectation has been that they address and carry out what was passed by the General Convention in any given year, and they carry that through to the next General Convention. And in this case, we spoke about the fact that they initiated some new policy, or some new ministry of the church that was not, in fact, endorsed by General Convention. Well, they're not prohibited from doing that explicitly. But my argument, and I will address this on the floor, is that I think it violates the spirit and the expectation historically. That I don't think that it's a wise move, and it's not a good stewardship of leadership to work an agenda in an elected body between conventions that was not addressed by the convention that elected them. So I think it's an example of overreaching. It may be of true conviction, and I'm certain that it is. Personally, I lean pro-choice, because I don't like legislating things of this kind of matter at the national level, and I don't want Congress legislating these things. I think these things belong in our relationships with God. And that's why I'm pro-choice, which is strange for some people. But I would like to see the Executive Council return to the original, in my view, the original intent for it was to carry out the program of General Convention. And this is new to it, and it wasn't addressed by General Convention, so I think it was an overreach.